Leap 360 provides several reports for schools, and let's talk about these reports. So the two reports, there are actually two reports that are available for schools, and the first one's called the Test Session List Report, and the second one is called the School Summary Report. Remember, with regards to multi-level reports, it is updated 24 hours after the teacher scores the items in educator scoring. Student must complete all sessions of the test. The teacher must score the written responses. And keep in mind that only those students who have completed all sessions and whose written responses have been scored will appear in any multi-level report. So let's talk about that first report called the Test Session List Report. So I'm going to move over a report that looks like what you're going to see. So let me go ahead and expand this. And so keep in mind that on the test session list report, notice the name here, test session list report, and as always, the top portion indicates the grade level, the school, and the school system. Now, notice that your school is going to show up here. And keep in mind that this is ELA Form 1A. And remember the reporting categories? So you have reading literary text, you have reading informational text, reading vocabulary, writing content, writing representation, and written conventions. So your subcategories, the reporting categories are listed here. And then notice that for this school, it will indicate the total number of students reported. Okay, now remember, see where it says 36? That means that 36 students completed all sessions of the test, and the teacher scored the writing responses for each of those students in educator scoring. And then for reading literary text, notice it breaks that part down into total points possible. So there are 21 possible. And notice that of those, for the 36 students that have data, the average score on reading literary text is 32%. Then you look at reading informational text. So the total points for that was 25, and the average score was 30% on that part. Then you look at reading vocabulary. The total points is 12, and the school average is 33%. And then you have your writing content, your writing presentation, and your writing conventions. Now keep in mind that this part here, the writing content, the writing presentation, the writing convention, that's what the teacher did in educator scoring. So there were 4 points available for writing content, and the average, the student for this school, the average percent correct was 25%. For writing presentation, there were 4 points available. The average percent correct is 18%. And then for writing conventions, the total points possible was 2, and the average percent correct is 40. Okay, so we talked about this part being your school. So your school's gonna be listed here. Now what's gonna show up next are all of the sessions, dealing with ELA Form 1A Grade 5. So the school created 3 uh, test sessions. And so notice they're listed here. Session 1 or test session 1, test session 2, test session 3. Now remember, these are your teachers. Those are the teachers that go here. So teacher A, teacher B, teacher C. So apparently there were, let's say, 3 grade 5 teachers, and they're listed here. This teacher had 14 students. 14 students. Now remember, the teacher could have had 20 students, but there are 14 that completed all sessions of the test, and the teacher graded the writing response. This teacher had 8 students on this report, and this teacher, teacher 3, had 14 students. And see all of this? The rest of this is the same as when we talked about the school part. Okay, now there's a couple of extra columns though that we need to talk about. So notice that the for teacher A, that first one listed, those 14 students, the average point earned was 5.6. Now remember, that's out of 21, okay? So out of 21 points possible, the average student got 5.6 points. For teacher 2, the average was 6.1. And for teacher 3, the average was 8.3. And notice the percent here. So 5.6 divided by 21 is 27%. 6.1 divided by 21 is 29%. 8.3 divided by 21 is 40%. So that's how they get those percentages. Now let's talk about this, the differential for the difference from the school average. So from all of these students here, all of those students, and basically, if you look at this, remember of all those students, so these numbers here, 14, 8, and 14 should add up to be 36. And remember, the school average was 32. So teacher 3, the students did better than the school average. See, it's in blue. It's in blue. So the 8% means that the school average for that reporting category, reading literary text, was 32%. The this teacher, her students or his students, the average was 40%. So 40 subtract 32 is 8. So that's how you get that 8%. And whenever it's above the school average, it's going to be in blue, and it's going to be positive. You see where these are negative? That means that teacher A, which had 27%, was 5 percentage points below the school average. And it kind of makes sense because 32 subtract 27 is 5. And then for teacher B, her students or his students on average was 3% below the school average. Okay, so that's this. And then if you look at the next one, the same idea. So for reading informational text, remember the school average was 30%. 30%. So for teacher A, the students, the average student got 6.4 out of 25. For teacher B, 7.1 out of 25. For teacher 3, 8.6 out of 25. And those are the percentages. And then the difference from school average is listed here. So notice, remember, the blue means that class on average was above the school average. Those two other classes, teacher A and teacher B, see where it's -4%, -2%? Those two averages here, 26 was 4 points below the school average. See, 30 minus 26 is 4. And then the 28%, 30 minus 28 is 2, was 2 points below the school average. And then you continue on. Okay, so that's how you read this. So this could have major instructional implications as well for working with certain teachers, or having maybe, if now obviously you would need to look at the at what the test is, and the average percent, and see if maybe teacher 3 could suggest certain instructional practices for the other two. So let's look at the next report. So here's a math one. So remember, in math you have your reporting categories. Now remember, this is grade 7 and this is form 1. Okay, so you have your reporting categories: ratios and proportional relationships, the number system, expressions and equations, and mathematical practices. And so notice that for this middle school, 184 students completed all sessions of the test, and the teacher scored the writing response. Okay, now there could have been a lot more students who were in those test sessions, See, in teacher A right here, the first one, where it says 21, that teacher could have had 25 students. That would mean that four students did not either complete all sessions or the teacher didn't score the writing response. So always keep that in mind as you're looking at these reports. So you got to keep in mind that this report, a multi-level report, only includes data from students that have completed all sessions of the test and where the teacher scored the writing response. Okay, so in this middle school, they created a lot more sessions. So you have, I'm going to just call these teacher A. So teacher A, teacher B, and so on. All right. So teacher A had 21 students, teacher B had 23 students. Teacher A, now remember, if you look at ratio and proportional relationships for this school, the total possible was 9. The school average percent correct for the ratio and proportional relationship is 36%. For the number system, the total points possible was 14. The school average was 34%. For expressions and equations, the total points possible is 19. The school average is 31%. And then mathematical practices, remember, that's the one that the teacher scored. So that would be more subjective if the teacher did not use the rubric. So make sure that you are using rubrics when scoring the writing responses. So for the mathematical practices, the total points possible is 7, and look how low this is. So 7%. Okay, and then just like with the ELA, you have all this information. So for teacher A, out of 9 points, the average student received 2.7 points, which is 30%. So 2.7 divided by 9 is 30%, which is 6 points below the average for that reporting category. So you see the 36%? 36 subtract 30 is 6, and so it's below, so it's negative 6%. For teacher 2, there were 23 students. Those 23 students scored on average 3.1 out of 9, which is 34% correct. And that student on average was 2 points below the school average. All right, and so if you notice the blue means that those classes, this teacher, this teacher, this teacher, and this teacher, all those classes were above the school average. So if you think about it, every report, all of these reports will have some blue, because in terms of averages, you have to have some that are above average and some that are below average. So all of them will have blue. Okay, so just always keep that in mind. So you always see blue in every column. Every column here, you will see blue. And then you go to the number system, you do the same thing. So for teacher A, 3.8 out of 14, which represents 27% correct, and that is 7 points below the school average of 34%. All right, and then that's how you read this. And then if you go to let's do a high school. So this is Algebra 1. Notice that in Algebra 1 you have more reporting categories. See up here? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 reporting categories. And you just read it the same way. So for this high school in Algebra 1, there were 137 students. If you add up all these students here, all of those students and all of those test sessions that were created, that should add up to be 137. And so for the first one, algebra, where it says see instructor in expressions, the total points possible is 5, and the school average is 22%. And here's the breakdown of each of those classes that made up this 137. So for example, for teacher A, the very first one listed, there were 12 students. On average, the student received 1.8 out of 5 for 36% correct. Notice that 36% is above 22%, the school average, so that's why you see blue. And then if you look at period, the next class, there were 15, 1 out of 5, 20%, and that 20% is 2 points below the school average, so C negative. So notice that for this reporting category, there are only two blues. Almost, remember we said that there's always going to be some blues, right? So notice though that there's a lot more negatives than blues. Then you go to the next one. Same thing. So the total points possible is 5 for an average of 24%. And then you go through the same thing. So for teacher A, 1.3 out of 5, 26%, which is 2 points above the average. So notice the blue. And then you go through the process. So all this is the same as before. So that's how you read this. And then that's going to take care of the test session list report. So let me go ahead and move this over. And then we're going to look at the next report. So the next report is the school summary report. So let me go ahead and move the school summary report over. Looks something like this. And so let me go ahead and expand it. And let me go ahead and move this up like this. Okay, so a couple of things I want you to notice here. Let's look at the top part. So notice that in the school summary report, it'll tell you the number of school tests reported. So 36 out of 49. So there are 49 students in all of those sessions listed for, and this is ELA, and this is grade 5. So for all of those test sessions in ELA grade 5, there are 49 students in there, but only 36 took all sessions of the test, and the teacher scored the writing responses. So the rest of those, so 49 minus 36, 13. So those 13 students, that could mean that either they did not complete all sessions, or if they did, the teacher did not score the writing response. And then you have the school system. So for the school system, EBR, there were 2,855 students in those test sessions for grade 5 ELA, and only 2,401 completed all sessions, and the teacher scored the writing response. And then you have the number of state tests reported. So in the state, almost 10,000 students took all sessions, and their teacher scored. Okay? Now, I want you to notice the summary report. So again, you have your reporting categories: reading literary text, reading informational text, reading vocabulary, writing content, writing presentation, and writing conventions. And I want you to notice, you see where it says group? It breaks it down into the school system, and the state. Okay, school system, and state. So if you look at reading literary text, the school, on average, for reading literary text, scored 32% correct. For the school system, it was 34. And then for the state, it was 38. So the state, for reading literary text, on average did better than the school system, and the school system on average did better than the school for that subcategory. If you look at writing conventions, now remember, writing conventions is the one that teacher scores. So the writing content, the writing presentation, the writing conventions. Notice in this particular case, again, it's very important that teachers use rubrics when scoring the writing responses. But the school did better in writing conventions. Now remember, the writing conventions is only, 2 points if you go back to that previous report? The writing conventions, on average, the school, the student got 40% correct, the school system 35, and the state 30. All right, so there's your bar graph. It breaks it down into comparison between school system, and state. If you go now to the next report, remember that's where it breaks it down into a table. And so it tells you the number of points, the average points earned. Now remember, this is for the school. This here is the information for the school. So for reading, the reading literary text, 6.8 out of 21. So there are 21 points available. The students at this school, on average, got 6.8 out of 21 for 32%. So you see that 32%? If I go back to the bar graph, you'll see the 32% here. All right. So the table that you see here is for the school. And if you look at reading informational text, there were 25 points available. On average, the students at that school got 7.4 out of 25 for 30% correct. All right. And then let's go to another report. So this one's going to be a math one. Same information. You have your reporting categories. It breaks it down into school, school system, state. Now, let's go back to the top here. So, you see there's a big discrepancy here. So there were 87 students in all of those test sessions for that school. This is grade 7. Only 46 students out of 87 took all sessions of the test and the teacher scored the writing response. Now, if you look at the school system, there's still quite a few hundred students that for some reason either did not take all sessions of the test, or if they did, for some reason, the teacher did not score the writing response. And then in terms of the state, for grade 7 math, 16,653 students took all sessions, and the writing response was scored. Okay, so if you look at ratios and proportional relationships, you have your school system, your state. And so if you look at the school and the school system were about the same. So both 41%. So 41% of the students at the school got the ratio and ratio proportional relationships correct. Okay, and the school system 41%, the state 44%. For number and number relations, the school on average scored 39% on the number system. The school system 41%, the state 47%. And then remember the mathematical practices, that's the one that the teacher scores in educated scoring. So the students at that school on average scored 10% correct. And the school system was 16% and the state was 21%. Now, remember, this is your bar graph. If you go to the table form, it breaks down into points. See right here the points? So for ratio and proportional relationships, there were 9 points available. For number system, there were 14 points available. For expressions and equations, there were 19 points available. And the mathematical practices, the one that the teacher scored, there were 7 points available. For ratio and proportional relationships, on average, out of those 9 points, the students at that school, this school here, got 3.7 out of 9 for an average of 41% correct. And that 41%, remember, corresponds to this 41%. And then if you go here, the mathematical practices, I just want to remind you, that's the one that the teacher scored. So out of 7 points on average, the student only got 0.7. 0.7 divided by 7 is 10%. And that's what you're going to see here. So you see how low this is compared to the state? The state was 21%. Okay, and so that's going to take care of the school summary report. So in terms of reports at the multi-level reports for the school, there were 2 multi-level reports for the school. They were test session list report and the school summary report. Okay, so that's going to take care of the reports available for schools for LEAP 360.